Capaci Teatro, podcast que aproxima pessoas, partilha experiências e inspira novas formas de fazer comunidade.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you to the speakers who've already gone. It was really, really fascinating to hear from you. And I'm going to start with an apology. I always tell my students never to apologise at the beginning of anything, but I am going to apologise for not speaking Portuguese and making you all suffer my English. I'm sorry for that. And I will definitely need your timing. Okay. I've been making theatre with different communities for about 25 years. So sometimes in schools, sometimes in prisons, sometimes with people on the streets in the places they live. I'm also an academic and a researcher, but I don't think of myself as that. I think of myself as being primarily a theatre practitioner. When I think about working with communities, I have 6 or 7 key things that I like to keep in mind when I'm doing that I kind of call my pillars or my tenets of working with communities. So my practice is rooted in these things, and I've lost some PowerPoint slides, so I can't actually show you them. But you can look at these lovely faces, which I'll explain in a minute instead. So my 6 or 7 things that are most important to me in my practice is that I bear in mind a politics of dignity for the communities that I work with, that I offer them spaces for articulation, for equitable dialogue, that my work is always centred around deeply embedded partnerships and the construction of third spaces where people can meet equally, and an invitation to communities to resist social and spatial injustice. That's the science bit. That's the theory bit. I'm actually going to focus the rest of this talk bearing those things in mind on one specific project, which I'm going to talk about in quite a lot of detail. I guess before I do that, I need to say that I largely work with communities that Indian philosopher Appidurai describes as bare citizens. I'm going to give you what do we call it in the UK? A warning, a trigger warning, we might say, that some of the pictures I'm going to show aren't very pretty to look at. I'm not showing them because I want to wallow in some of the pictures, but it's really important to set the context of this work. So I won't have them on the screen for very long, and if you don't wish to look at them, look away, and I will tell you when it's safe to look back. So Appidurai describes people as being bare citizens when they have no rights, when they're not allowed to vote for a variety of different reasons, when they don't have a formal address, and when education and medicine and medical facilities are hard to find. I've been working with a community of bare citizens in India, in Mumbai, for 25 years. And these pictures largely show the area that I work in. So I work in a small, it's not small, that's the wrong word, in a very large informal housing settlement. It might be described as a slum, but I wouldn't do that, usually, in the centre of Mumbai. So if you look at this slide on the end here, that's a picture obviously from above, but that's roughly the area of Mumbai called Dharavi. Those of you that might have seen Slumdog Millionaire, that's Dharavi was filmed there. The second 2 pictures are an area slightly to the side of that, which are urban villages, but they're all very, very similar. The context of Dharavi is it's an area of Mumbai that is a mile square, but yet it houses 1.6 million people. So that's like a city, I believe Porto is a similar sort of size, but condensed into a mile square. The other statistic I'm going to give you before I move on, because it's an important statistic for the context of the work that I do, is within Dharavi, there is only 1 toilet for every 1,400 people. I'm going to move on from that one. The next one's not great either. So this is the area that we make theatre in. These are the lanes of Dharavi. Rough idea of people's housing in the area, and these lovely people. So no more horrible photographs. Lots of photographs, but not horrible ones. 25 years ago, I was invited to take a group of students from the UK, from the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, who are studying community theatre or applied theatre, to India to work with a group of young people from Dharavi. This is a bit of an emotional moment. I always stop when I bring this photo up, when I actually look at this photo. This is the young people from Dharavi that I worked with the first year. My students and I worked with the first year I was there. So at that point, the young people in this photograph were about 13 and 14. They're clearly not that age now. There's a gentleman at the end of the screen in a blue shirt. He is my partner in India. He's a theatre director, and he set up the project in partnership with me. And the guy in the striped shirt in the middle is a translator. He's a translator for us, but he's really a theatre director, but he speaks Marathi and Hindi and English, and so fluidly moves between all of those. The other people in this photograph are all young people from that first year who live in Dharavi and who that year made theatre with the people from my university. These people come back every year. So 22 years, 23 years, 24 years later, they come back and do the project again and again. Only they're not doing the project, they're running the project. So the first year we described it as a divya on the end there, and I described it as a pilot project to see what would happen if we brought two different, very, very different groups of young people together to make theatre and to exchange theatre practices. And that's really key. It wasn't us going over from the UK and teaching them theatre. It was a combination of both groups of young people sharing skills that they had together to create something new. 20-odd years later, this particular group of young people that continue to come back, one of them is a theatre director in his own right who makes theatre now in Dharavi as his day job. One is a location scout for Bollywood films. One is a paediatrician who also still works in Dharavi as a paediatrician. One of them is a dentist. One of them is a film editor. I'm not going to go on, but it's important to know that they come back each year and they take time off of their jobs. I forgot the social worker. She's really important, and you'll see her in other photographs. They're my co-creators. They're my co-researchers. They are the team for a very long time. I've gone completely off script. The translator must be pulling his hair out. This is the most recent group of young people that we've worked with. So the projects change each year. So we don't make theatre with the same group of people. The same original people come back and work as directors. But each year we work potentially with new groups. And that first project has spiraled out to now be 20 or 30 different projects every 5-year process. This group of young people also live in Dharavi, and they were the first group of young people who were officially given the title of researchers. So not only were they co-devisers and co-creators of theatre, we taught them research skills so they can research the areas of areas of performance they want to look at with their peers and continue to make work and do research that informs sociologists and social workers in the area when we're not there. I guess that's the other important thing to say. The work doesn't stop if I'm not there. The work continues all year. So in that first year's project, and actually very similar to this group of young people's project, the work we made was about work that was about topics and things that were important to the young people. They were really, really committed to making work about gender equality, about sexism, about gender-based violence, and things that they felt were holding them back. They absolutely did not want to make work about the place that they lived in because it's their home, and they didn't want to draw attention to that. They wanted to focus on things that they thought were more important than the lack of sanitation, the lack of medicine, and the lack of education that they were experiencing, because they saw those as incidental. I'll come back to that point. Why is it not moving? There we go. So they had a lot of fun. While making theatre about gender-based violence, it's also it's a fun-based activity. I'm going to zip through these. So we made that work with young people for probably about 5 or 6 years, and then a group of women in a village called Worley Collywadder heard that we had been regularly making theatre, and they contacted some of the young people and said, could they have some theatre sessions? So then for 5 years, we worked with the women from Worley Collywadder. Now, this is a group that the women from Worley Collywadder live a very sheltered existence. They live in the same lanes that we looked at earlier, so they're absolutely in very, very cramped conditions. But in their particular community, it is unacceptable for them to leave their houses and be in the streets. And so we didn't make theatre the first couple of years. They wanted, the first 2 years at least. What they decided they wanted was a space. I'm actually going to put my scripter down. They wanted a space to get together as women and hang out together and play games, because in their day-to-day lives, there was no time for that. They weren't allowed to be in the streets. They didn't make contact with other people. And so for the first 2 years with this particular group of people, we played games, we sang Bollywood songs, we did some pretty raunchy dancing. And slowly, we started to make site-specific theatre. The thing that these women wanted to make theatre about was celebrating those very lanes that we looked at earlier as being the places that they lived. The place they live is likely to be bulldozed at any point in time by the council who wants to reclaim that land. And so they live very precarious lives, and the council labels their village as a slum area, which entitles them to bulldoze it if they choose to. These women wanted to make a piece of site-specific theatre that challenged that concept. They wanted to make theatre about the joy of living where they live and the community spirit of where they live. So the work we make with these women in particular is a celebration. It's a celebration that those lanes are the places that they first fell in love, where they had their first kiss, where they watched their children take their first steps. And they wanted to make theatre about that space and how precious that space is to them, albeit flawed. I'm going to skip through some of these for time. So they made a really powerful piece of performance in the lanes that looked at the fact that they couldn't use the spaces outside their houses. So they made a piece of theatre that started as 3 still images and then became a very complex piece of theatre that looked at how they used the space when they were children, how they use the space now, and how they would like to use that space outside their houses. Again, lots of singing, lots of dancing, lots of Bollywood. Games.
1 minute.
How many? One?
1.
Food. Okay, so this is them showing on one side how they use the space now. They use it as a delivery space. They take children to school. They deliver food to elderly relatives. This is how they used the space when they were children. They played hopscotch. They rode bicycles. I love this photograph because this woman had never been on a bicycle in her life. And she wanted to incorporate it into the performance because it just happened to be there. So the 2 women alongside her are literally holding her. And at one point they were doing the pedals for her. And how they want to use the space now. Now they'd like to use that space to teach each other things. The thing they particularly wanted to teach each other was spreadsheets. Wouldn't be my choice, but that was their choice. So that became quite an important theatre performance to them and to the community around. Nobody was invited. Audience members came past. They stopped. They stayed. They didn't stay. Cutting a very long story short, now there are specific hours of the day that they are literally allowed to sit on that step and do what they want and meet. There's a long, long journey between making that piece of theatre and that happening. I think I've got about 30 seconds left. My last 30 seconds are going to be... This is the most recent project. This one has only been running for 2 years currently, and this was the performance that happened this January. same type of environment, same group of people, same original lineup that we looked at involved in this. This is a site-specific piece of a walking tour of the area in which these young people live. Again, they want to make theatre that celebrates the positives, the community spirit, and the place they had their first kiss was particularly important to this group of young people. But this is a piece of theatre that weaves its way through the lanes, telling the 200-year history of the slum that they live in and why it's important that they stay on that land and aren't moved, with lots of funny moments and all the things you would expect in a theatre performance, but specifically targeted at architects. Because the architects who are involved in the slum clearances want to move these people into tenement houses where they have walls where they can't see each other. So now this performance happens once a month to all architectural students of the local university, as well as members of the public that are interested in going, because we're trying that the young people, not me, the young people really want to make a difference to their community and prove to the people who are making decisions about them and their lives that they need a say in that, and they need a say in how they live and why they live the way that they do. And for them, theatre has become a tool to do that.
Este foi mais um episódio do podcast Capacite Teatro, um podcast que aproxima pessoas, partilha experiências e inspira novas formas de fazer comunidade. Um projeto do Teatro do Noroeste, Centro Dramático de Viana, promovido pela Comunidade Intermunicipal do Alto Minho, com o apoio do Portugal 2030, Pessoas 2030 e da União Europeia.